Okay, so I'm going to start while Alan's getting up and going. So thank you everyone for joining the Solid Waste Facilities webinar. This is our statewide webinar about solid waste facilities in 1383. So my name is Ashley Yee. I'm CalRecycle's 1383 Implementation Manager. And before I turn it over to Julia Doloff, who will go over logistics for the webinar, I wanted to introduce you to everyone who will be presenting or available to respond to questions. So from CalRecycle, we have Paulina Lawrence, Martin Perez, and Beatrice Paroli representing the solid waste facilities. So they're going to be doing a bulk of the presentation and probably answering quite a bit of the questions. So we have Kara Morgan representing collections and local assistance. We have Julia Doloff also representing collections, and she helped put together these webinars, so the regional and the statewide webinars. So thank you so much, Julia. We have Ellen Elizorio and Trisha Moore representing our compliance and enforcement. And we have Gracia and Julia who are going to be helping with our questions that come in. So Julia, I will turn it over to you to go over the logistics for the questions.
All righty, let me just pull up my screen here really quickly with the instructions. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this now. All right, so thank you everyone for attending this morning. So first off, we are gonna have a 20-minute presentation covering the solid waste facility requirements of the regulations. Afterwards, we will be holding a Q&A session in which CalRecycle staff, so myself and Gracia, will unmute participants to allow you to ask your questions over the webinar. So please use the instructions shown on this slide for the Q&A session. So if you'd like to ask a question, please type your question or a summary of your question into the question pane. Staff will unmute participants in the order that questions come in. And note that you will need to unmute yourself on your end when asked to by a CalRecycle staff member. And please state your affiliation before asking your question. We will try to get to as many different people as possible today, and CalRecycle may be responding to some questions in writing in the question pane. So please review those questions and responses in the pane every so often. For those who are watching via the broadcast, we will verbalize questions and responses for you to hear as well. And questions and comments regarding the merit of the regulations were responded to during the rulemaking period. Therefore, today we will be focusing on questions or clarifications regarding implementation of the regulations and tools. If we do not get to your question today, we will follow up with you at a later date. So now I'm going to hand it off to Beatrice Paroli for her presentation on the facility requirements. So one moment as I transition. All right, B, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a sec. Okay, perfect. Okay. Let me get this out here. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, Julia. Good morning, everyone. This presentation provides an overview of the new operating standards that SB 1383 will add to the existing solid waste facility regulations. These regulations will take effect January 1, 2022, with a few exceptions, which I will point out during the presentation. Why is this not moving? Okay. The new operating standards that will be required of the solid waste facilities were added to the existing standards. Title 14, Chapter 3 for the transfer processing operations and facilities. Chapter 3.1 for the composting operations and facilities. Chapter 3.2 for the in-vessel digestion operations and facilities. And Title 27 for the solid waste landfills and disposal. Starting with the new state minimum standards for the transfer processing operations and facilities. This is an overview of what I'll be covering, starting with receiving the organic waste and what is required at the front end. Next, the new operating standards that a facility will perform after processing the material, and then the incompatible materials limits and how it relates to the organic material sent for further processing. When the hauler arrives at the facility, they will identify the load either as a mixed waste organic collection stream, MO, or a source-separated organic waste collection stream, SSO. I will be referring to these waste streams as MO and SSO throughout the presentation. What is MO and SSO? Well, MO is the organic waste collected in a container that is required to be sent to a high diversion organic waste processing facility. SSO is organic waste collected in a container that is required to be sent to a facility that recovers that material designated for collection in that container. The MO and SSO are required to be kept separate. This is because operators have to demonstrate whether the waste streams meet certain standards. The MO has to demonstrate if it meets the organic waste recovery efficiency standard of 50% by 2022 and 75% by 2025. This is used to determine if the facility is a high diversion organic waste processing facility. It also has to demonstrate if it meets the incompatible materials limit, whereas the SSO only has to demonstrate if it meets the incompatible material limits. Another receiving waste or front-end requirement is the gray container waste evaluations. Beginning July 1, 2022, an operator that receives gray container collection stream and more than 500 tons of solid waste from at least one jurisdiction annually will be required to perform waste evaluations on the gray container collection stream. This collection stream is the solid waste collected in the gray container that is part of a 3-container collection service that prohibits the placement of organic waste. The operator will conduct one waste evaluation per quarter, record the results, and report the average ratio of remnant organic waste to non-organic waste. Now, moving to the point the waste has been processed through the transfer processing facility or operation, let's talk about the measurement protocols. The measurement protocols for the MO are found in these sections, and in these sections for the SSO. The methodology is the same in all of these sections. Even though it's the same, it's done for different reasons, and what to report is also different, which I will talk in more detail in the next few slides. Also note that the EA may approve, with concurrence by the department, alternatives to the measurement protocols if the operator can demonstrate that it will be as accurate as the prescribed protocols. Operators are required to sample the organic waste recovered from each organic waste type separately and calculate how much organic waste is being recovered and disposed. The measurements take place after processing, but before it leaves the facility, and are conducted for each reporting period. There are 4 reporting periods per year, 1 per quarter. So for each reporting period, the measurement protocol will be performed over 10 consecutive operating days as follows. Step 1 is to collect a random and representative composite sample of at least 200 pounds and weigh the sample. Step 2, remove the incompatibles. Incompatible material is any human-made inert material, plastic, metal, those types of materials, and also includes organic waste that the receiving facility is not designed, permitted, or authorized to perform organic waste recovery. Once the incompatibles are removed, step 3, reweigh the sample without the incompatibles. Then step 4, using the weights recorded in the steps above, calculate the total weight of organic waste recovered from that waste type for that day. The operator would repeat these steps for each organic waste type, including the waste sent for disposal. The measurement protocol for the SSO is the same as it is for the MO. Again, the SSO does not have to comply with the recovery efficiency standard, but will have to demonstrate if it meets the incompatible materials limit. As mentioned before, the MO and SSO must be kept separate. Operators are also required to keep the record keeping and reporting for the MO and SSO separate. The operator will record the daily incoming weights of the MO, the results of each sample conducted to comply with the measurement requirements, the daily outgoing weights of organic waste recovered from the MO, and the daily outgoing weights of organic waste sent for disposal from the MO. The record-keeping requirements for the SSO are the same as it is for the MO. Adding the outgoing weights for each operating day that the measurements were conducted during the reporting period, the operator will report the sum of the organic waste recovered from the MO and sent to market or for further processing, and the sum of the organic waste sent to disposal from the MO, and is reported through RDRS. These two sums are used to determine the recovery efficiency of the facility. The reporting requirements for the SSO are the same as it is for the MO. The incompatible materials limits is a cleanliness standard for material recovered from the MO and SSO that is sent for recovery. It is calculated at the back end before the material leaves the site and is determined by performing the same measurement protocol described earlier for the MO. The regulations require that organic waste recovered after processing from the MO and SSO demonstrate if it meets the following incompatible material limits. On and after January 1, 2022, no more than 20% of incompatible material by weight. On and after January 1, 2024, no more than 10% of incompatible material by weight. These levels will determine where the operator can send their waste. If the organic waste stream meets the incompatible material limits, the material can go to any organic waste recovery activity. If the organic waste material exceeds the incompatible material limits, then the material must go to a facility that can meet the additional quality standards, such as sending it to a transfer processing facility that can get it to at least 80% clean by 2022 and 90% by 2024, or to an organic waste recovery activity that disposes of material with no more than 20% of organic waste by 2022 and 10% by 2024. For example, let's take this load, which has 95% organic waste and 5% incompatible material, determined by the operator using the measurement protocol explained earlier. These are some examples of organic waste recovery activities: an organic recycling center that meets the 3-part test, a compostable material handling operation or facility. Organic waste recovery activities are activities that divert organic waste from disposal to constitute a reduction of landfill disposal. This truck has 95% organic waste and 5% incompatible material. It can be sent to any organic waste recovery activity. In this example, this truck is 60-40, 60% organic waste and 40% incompatible material. Because it has more than the allowable limits of incompatible material, the waste can only be sent to a facility that can meet the additional quality standards, such as another transfer processing facility that can meet the incompatible material limits, an organic waste recovery activity that disposes of material that meet the allowable levels of organic content of 20% by 2022 and 10% by 2024, or an organic recycling center that meets the 3-part test. Solid waste handling and consolidation sites. Consolidation sites are facilities or operations that receive solid waste for the purpose of storing prior to transferring directly from one container to another, or from one vehicle to another for transport, and do not conduct processing activities. Example of solid waste facilities that would be considered consolidation sites include a direct transfer facility, a sealed container transfer operation, a limited volume transfer operation. Consolidation sites are not subject to the transfer processing facilities and operations measurements or record-keeping reporting requirements. If SSO is received, it must be kept separate from other solid waste stream. The material shall be transported only to transfer and processing facilities or operations that comply with the organic waste recovery efficiency requirements. Now I will cover the new operating standards for composting and in-vessel digestion operations and facilities. The measurement protocol for composting and in-vessel digestion operations and facilities are found in these sections. The methodology is the same in both of these sections. Processing waste at a compost or in-vessel digestion operation or facility. Processing waste at a compost facility will produce a finished product, in this case compost, and material for disposal. Operators are required to sample to measure the amount of organic waste in the material sent for disposal. Organic waste that are textiles, carpet, hazardous wood waste, non-compostable paper, human and pet waste, and materials subject to quarantine is not required to be measured as organic waste when performing the measurements. The amount of organic waste in the material sent for disposal will factor in determining if transfer and processing facilities that fail to meet the incompatible material limits can send their waste to this facility. The measurement protocol to determine the amount of organic waste in the material sent for disposal is the same as what is performed at the transfer and processing facilities, with two minor differences. The operator is removing the non-organic material instead of the incompatibles from the sample, and is performing the measurement protocol only on the waste sent for disposal instead of each waste type leaving the site. Operators will record the daily outgoing weights of organic waste recovered and produced, the daily outgoing weights of material sent for disposal, and the quarterly percentage of organic waste contained in the material sent for disposal, and report the percentage of organic waste contained in the material sent for disposal through RDRS. Feedstock sources for composting and in-vessel digestion. This is to help transfer and processing facility operators determine which organic waste recovery activity they can send their waste to. Recall that an operator of a composting or in-vessel digestion operation or facility is required to measure the amount of organic waste in the material sent for disposal. This is where that number comes into play. If the amount of organic waste in the material sent for disposal is less than 20% on and after January 1, 2022, and 10% on and after January 1, 2024, then any transfer and processing facility operator may send their waste to this facility, including those that fail to meet the incompatible material limits. Remember that 60/40 truck? It had 60% organic waste and 40% incompatible material. It can be sent to this facility. If the amount of organic waste in the material sent for disposal is more than 20% on and after January 1, 2022, and 10% on and after January 1, 2024, then transfer and processing facilities that fail to meet the incompatible material cannot send the material to this facility. That same 60/40 truck cannot be sent to this facility. It would have to go to a facility that can meet the additional quality standards, such as another transfer and processing facility that can meet the incompatible material limits, or another composting facility that disposes of material that meets the organic content levels. That wraps up the new operating standards in Title 14. The next slide will cover the new solid waste landfill standards in Title 27. Operators of new or expanding landfills will be required to implement an organic waste recovery activity. As previously mentioned, an organic waste recovery activity is an activity that diverts organic waste from disposal to constitute a reduction of landfill disposal. Examples of some organic waste recovery activities include composting facility, in-vessel digestion facility, biomass conversion facility, organic recycling facility. And this can also include a separate receiving area used to store material to be sent off-site for further processing. Operators that are only accepting waste that has already been processed through a high diversion organic waste processing facility or a designated source separated organic waste facility are not required to implement organic waste recovery activities. All landfill operators will be required to prepare an Organic Disposal Reduction Status Impact Report, a SIR. The SIR evaluates the potential impacts to landfills resulting from the implementation of the organic waste disposal reduction requirements. The regulations include a list of items that are to be included in the SIR and is required to be submitted to CalRecycle no later than January 1, 2023. This slide is to clarify the permitting requirements. For new and expanding solid waste facilities, operators will be required to hold a public meeting with any affected disadvantaged communities within 180 days of submitting the permit application package. The requirements pertaining to solid waste facilities, regulatory tiers, and permits will not change under SB 1383. While the organic waste recovery targets established by SB 1383, current facilities may be looking at changing their operations or taking in additional or new material types in response to SB 1383. Title 27, Section 21620 identifies the type of changes in a design or operation of a facility and the process to incorporate those changes into a solid waste facility permit and/or the operating document. Therefore, operators proposing to change the design or operation of their facility should submit an application to their solid waste local enforcement agency for determination under Section 21620. The last requirement I will cover is the biosolids generated at a publicly owned treatment works, POTW, which is in Article 6 of Chapter 12. Biosolids generated by a POTW are not subject to the following requirements. Article 3, the organic waste collection service requirements, or the transfer processing operations and facilities measurement and record-keeping reporting requirements. Material received at a POTW other than inedible kitchen grease and food material and does not have an approval from CalRecycle that additional type of organic material is an anaerobically digestible material or a solid waste facilities permit to receive that material will be considered disposal. Therefore, an operator sends any material to a POTW that is not authorized to receive that material will constitute landfill disposal, and the weights of that material will be added to the total weight calculated by the sending facility or operation. The next steps for SB 1383 is the implementation. CalRecycle is working on implementation tools to assist the stakeholders better understand the changes to the solid waste facility regulations. CalRecycle will be hosting a technical training series that is scheduled over a 2-week period, April 13th, 14th, the 21st, and 22nd of 2021. One of the sessions will provide an overview of SB 1383 relating to solid waste facilities, including more detail on the measurements. We are also developing web pages that will include regulation implementation Q&As related to solid waste facilities, Title 14 and 27, measurement web pages relating to the transfer processing facilities and operations, composting, and in-vessel digestion, guidance on alternative measurement protocols, and guidance on the SIR. We are also working on changes to the RDRS to support the new reporting required by solid waste facility operators under SB 1383. To receive updates for further webinars, web pages, and guidance documents, please sign up for the SLCP listserv. One last note, questions and comments regarding the merit of the regulations were responded during the rulemaking period. The rulemaking file has been finalized and adopted. We will focus on clarifying questions and implementation questions about the regulations to ensure compliance with the state minimum standards when they become effective. Now I'll return it back to Julia to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Bea. So I just want to give a quick reminder to those of you who are watching with us right now. So to ask a question, please type your question or a summary of your question into the question pane. CalRecycle staff will unmute participants in the order that questions come in. And just another reminder, you must unmute yourself on your end when asked to by a CalRecycle staff member, and please state your affiliation when asked as well. And again, if we cannot answer your question today, we will respond to you at a later date. So we don't have too many questions coming in. Just a reminder, we go until 10 a.m. So if you do have a question, feel free to type into the chat. So the first question is coming from Jennifer Gilbert. Jennifer, you can unmute yourself to ask your question and please state your affiliation. Okay, so I will ask Jennifer's question. Her question is, when does material from an SSO, for example, a compost facility, get sampled for contamination, before or after composting?
Sampling at a composting facility will happen after the composting. It's after it's been processed, but before it leaves the site.
Perfect. We'll go to the second question. The second question is by Jennifer Claiborne. If you can please unmute yourself to ask your question and please state your affiliation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm with Sacramento County, and my question was kind of a clarifying one. We own and operate a transfer station and a landfill, where at this point in time, we do not provide any type of sorting. And so I wanted to get clarity. Is the expectation that as customers bring in their loads, are we supposed to turn away loads that are mixed organics, since we don't do any of that high diversion or organic waste recovery activity at these facilities? And does that make sense, or should I clarify further?
So this question contains a little bit of both. As far as the facility is concerned, if you have a transfer station that does not conduct any processing, any organics processing, that would be considered a consolidation site. And so consolidation sites like these mentioned, it's only for the purposes of storing material in order to transfer from one container to another. They don't conduct any processing at the site.
Correct.
For the landfill, so there are no requirements. They're not required to turn away loads. The landfill operator can choose to turn away any loads that, just like with like existing practices, they could choose to turn away any loads they want to. So that hasn't changed, and it's the same. The same goes with any other.
So the customer comes with a mix.
I think you got cut off. So if a customer comes in with mixed organic loads, so those loads should be, when the regulations take into effect, there's going to be collection services requirements that will be taken into effect as well, that will impact the flow of material within that jurisdiction. So I will leave, if I can defer the collection piece to Kara to respond to. She can get into a little more detail as to what the changes are going to be made.
Sure. I think, Jennifer, you're referring to self-haulers that are bringing material to the facility, and the requirements in Article 7 require self-haulers, if they're bringing mixed organics, they are supposed to bring mixed organics to a high diversion organic waste processing facility. Same with if they have source separator, SSO material, and they're to bring that to a facility that can process the material. So I think, Martin, I'll turn it back to you, but I think part of the question is at the transfer station, where they're consolidating. What do they do with those self-haulers that come to that facility, and if they have mixed organics or source separated?
Yeah, so they can take in those, again, they can take in those streams, but they consolidation sites do not conduct organic processing. So they would have to move that, they would have to send that material to a site that does conduct organic processing of those streams. So I hope we answered all of your questions, but yeah, I guess I'll just turn it back to you if you have any follow-up questions on that.
No, that sounds great. I think we need to talk further about operations then on our end of those folks in outreach and communication to the community. So thank you.
All right, our next question is coming from Carlos. Carlos, you can go ahead and unmute yourself to ask your question, and please state your affiliation. Okay, I'll ask Carlos's question. In quantifying incompatibles in SSO, weighing the much smaller contaminant portion rather than weighing the whole sample again still provides the information needed. Would measuring the contaminant portion rather than the sample portion require EA approval as an alternative method?
Let me see if I can understand that question.
Yeah, I think I already answered that question in the question page. Sorry, I forgot to turn my webcam earlier. So you're using the same sample, and basically what you're doing is taking a 200 pound sample, right? Using that weight, and you're pulling out the organic fraction. You're pulling out the incompatibles, and you weigh those. There's no need to weigh the total sample because you already have that. So think of it, you're taking the total and you're turning it to two fractions, the organic fraction and the incompatible fraction, and you're weighing those. So in total, they should equal up to the total sample, if that makes sense. And going back to your other question, like B mentioned, alternative measurement protocols, if you do have proposed an alternative, that would go to the EA for approval and CalRecycle for concurrence.
Perfect. The next question is from Catherine Cross. If you can please unmute yourself to ask your question and please state your affiliation.
This is Cross from Orange County, and I think my question was answered in the chat.
Yeah, some people listening via the webcast cannot see the answer, so please go ahead and ask your question again and we'll respond to it again.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. So I was just wanting the question of, or the word expanding landfill to be explained.
Okay, yeah, so for the purposes of that section, sorry, and let me go back to the section. So we're referring to section 20750.1. That talks about new or expanding landfills having to implement an organic waste recovery activity. Under subdivision C, it talks about what expanding means. For the purposes of this section, expanding means a solid waste facility proposing to make a significant change to the design or operation as determined by the EA pursuant to section 21665. So that could be a vertical lateral expansion, increase in permitted tonnage. It does not, for the purpose of this section, does not include changing in the hours of operation. I might be missing one more parameter in there. But again, it's referring back to 21665 and 21 to those LEAs that they're familiar with that section. It talks about what constitutes a significant change to the landfill, which would then require a permit revision. And there's a few folks that asked the same question. So what I will do is, I believe I already answered your question, but I'll do is I'll go ahead and respond to those in the question pane. Thanks.
Thanks, Martin. So our next question is coming from Bill. Bill, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and state your affiliation to ask your question.
Thanks, Julia. This is Bill Hutton with the Hutton Law Office in Los Angeles. My question is that except for performance-based jurisdictions, organics can be delivered to a facility that recovers organics. Would the local jurisdiction be subject to enforcement or penalties if its organics are delivered to a compost or in-vessel facility that does not meet the organic content residual limit?
Got it. Thank you for that question. Ellen, do you want to start with the response?
You could go ahead, Kara. I think you might be more familiar with the in-vessel facilities than I am.
Sure, and then you can add on. Let me know if I didn't get the full understanding of the question. So in the regulations in Article 3, and I would have to pop to that section, which I can do in a minute. With respect to either a 2-container collection system or a single unsegregated container collection system, the jurisdiction is required to send material to a high diversion organic waste processing facility. And as B mentioned, this is covered in Title 14, the regulations, as far as the performance requirements of 50% recovery of organic waste by 2022, 75% recovery of organic waste by 2025. If a jurisdiction is sending material to a facility that does not meet the performance requirements over a certain period of time, then the jurisdiction may be subject to an enforcement action. With that enforcement action, the jurisdiction has basically 3 kind of options or pathways. First, the jurisdiction and the facility can make changes to meet the necessary performance requirements, and this would be achieved during a certain period of time during that notice of violation period. Also, if more time is needed, the department can issue what's called a corrective action plan, so additional time can be allowed. The second option is the jurisdiction can send their materials to another high diversion organic waste processing facility that's meeting the performance requirements. And then the third option is the jurisdiction would implement a 3-container collection service. So if a jurisdiction is in that situation, CalRecycle would be working with the jurisdiction. It would be under an enforcement action, notice of violation. There would be certain time that's allowed for the jurisdiction to make those necessary changes. And as I said, depending on the situation, CalRecycle could issue a corrective action plan. And just so you know, that is in Article 3 of the regulations, and it is in, bear with me, it is in, you can find this in section 18984.3. I hope that answered your question.
I think I answered it poorly or asked it poorly. Let me try again.
Sure.
I'm envisioning a 3-container system.
Oh, okay.
And for a performance-based jurisdiction, that material has to go to a designated facility.
Mm-hmm.
If the jurisdiction is not a performance-based jurisdiction and has to send it to a facility that recovers organics, is that the extent of its obligation? Has it done all it needs to do, or can it be subject to enforcement if, say, downstream that compost and vessel facility can't meet some of its requirements? Where does the liability of the local jurisdiction end?
Oh, that is a great question. Probably a little bit more complex. So if the jurisdiction is a 3-container system, sending it to the facility, which let me go to that section. So in this case, we have a 3-container system. The contents of the green container must be transported to a facility that recovers source-separated organic waste. And the blue container must go to a facility that recovers the materials designated for collection in the blue container. So, you know, I think in that situation, if by chance, and I'm trying to think of a scenario, if the facility was itself not meeting its obligations under Title 14, the facility, that's that situation. You know, I don't know exactly what we would do if we had that situation. We haven't really talked about that scenario per se. So I think, you know, certainly if CalRecycle is informed that a facility is not meeting its obligations pursuant to the regulations, certainly I think CalRecycle would communicate that to the jurisdiction. But I'm not aware that it would trigger an enforcement action, as I had previously described with a high diversion organic waste processing facility. But we can do a follow-up and check on that for sure. Alan, do you have any more to add to that?
Yeah, and I think it's what Bill, I believe was his name, is what he's describing there. It's kind of a two-part. You know, I think what he's describing is the jurisdiction is implementing this 3-container system. You know, just for the purposes of this scenario, is educating and is telling, you know, all of its generators to utilize the 3-container system appropriately. If everybody was doing it on that aspect from the curbside or from the back of the house at the generators, then it was going to facility, and maybe the facility is not compliant. And I'm kind of filling in the blanks a lot here with the facility and is not meeting its requirements. You know, then there's, you know, kind of on the facility side, and maybe Martin wants to chime in here, or B, the facility is not meeting their requirements, but there is communication. And I think what's kind of built into Bill's statement there is whether or not the local jurisdiction would be subject to enforcement. So kind of as Kara mentioned, and just the process, the department's not just going to hand out, you know, a violation. There's going to be communication that's going to be occurring with the jurisdiction in the sense of a notification of a compliance evaluation occurring upon the jurisdiction. If violations are found, the department will communicate with the jurisdiction regarding an NOV being issued. And then there's time that's built in there for the jurisdiction to address those. And then again, Kara mentioned about the corrective action plan. If that should be warranted and the jurisdiction needs additional time, then a corrective action plan will be provided. And then throughout that, there's going to be communication from the department to the jurisdiction and on that sense. So, you know, Bill, you know, there's a little bit more, hopefully that provides a little bit more clarity that it's not just, you know, we're going to be handing out violations and subject to penalties, but every jurisdiction is subject to enforcement. But there is going to be the communication from the department to the jurisdictions. But regarding the facility, you know, I don't know if Martin wants to chime in or B wants to chime in, but facilities are required to meet particular requirements, you know, on that aspect. But so you kind of had a two-part in there, but hopefully that provided a little bit of a clarity for you, Bill.
Yeah, it did. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. At least the local jurisdictions at a minimum would have some time to resolve those issues if its downstream facilities were non-compliant.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Bill. Our next question is coming from Patty. Patty, one moment. Okay, you can go ahead and unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hi, my name is Patty Tate. I'm the program director here for the San Luis Obispo County Integrated Waste Management Authority. First question I have is, I think I heard that there was going to be a series of trainings April 13th, 14th, and then it kind of faded out. So I didn't catch the exact dates. So I'd appreciate it if they were posted so that we could make arrangements in our schedules now to be present for these trainings. So number one, I need to know the dates. And then number two, is each day the training the same, or does the training build on each day, i.e. they're different every day? So we should be expected to, be at every single training. In addition, can our landfill and AD operators expect county-specific help for their questions, or is this more like a 1,000-foot level, how do I report, who do I report to kind of training?
So the technical training series, Paulina, do you want to go ahead and take it?
No problem. Hi, Patty. Thanks for your question. And Martin has answered it in the chat as well, but the technical training series is a training series that CalRecycle provides for local enforcement agencies, LEAs, and operators and facility operators, excuse me. They're scheduled for April 13th and 14th. And also for the 21st and the 22nd. So this will be a virtual training. This is our first virtual technical training series. And in that, there will be several different sessions and tracks on different types of topics. And one of them is going to be just an overview on SB 1383 in the solid waste facility portions of the regs due to the audience that it's focused at. So we will be sending out information and registration. We'll also, if you're on our all LEA listserv, we will also be sending out information when that is available for those technical training series events. Otherwise, we will also be doing informational series trainings, so to speak, or updates at our local enforcement roundtables. And also we will also be providing this webinar as a statewide recorded webinar for people as well. And then in terms of asking for questions with regards to the 30,000 foot level or the day-to-day questions, you are always available to reach out to CalRecycle and in regards to the permitting and assistance branch, and we have jurisdictional contacts that work with each of the jurisdictions with regards to solid waste facilities. If it's regards to collections and implementations of programs, Kara's wonderful group in LAMD also have their liaisons, which also are assigned by jurisdictions, which help as well. So if there's something that kind of goes in terms of a question that goes kind of across the board between permitting and collections, or if it has to deal with enforcement, we work together and we get the appropriate people to help you to answer that question. So Patty, I hope I answered that question. Let me know.
Thank you very much. You did. I appreciate it greatly.
Okay, you're welcome.
Great, thank you, Paulina, for answering that question. The next question is from Janet Gardner. If you can please unmute yourself and ask your question, and please state your affiliation.
Hi, affiliation is CART as well as a landfill, so we operate a transfer station. We do have an organics part as well as we operate a landfill. So on a 3-bin system, we have some haulers that are asking for space to do this sample. So first question is, in that language that we're seeing, 40 samples coming from all waste streams or 40 samples from each bin? So I would have 40 sample ones. And then my next one was, as a transfer station, when we're doing these 200-pound samples, is it from each bin?
Okay, I can take that one. Janet, to answer your question, so for transfer and processing facilities, the measurements are going to be conducted at the back end once the material has been processed, and it's going to be on each organic material type that is separated after processing by that facility. So even if you're taking several different waste streams up front, we're looking at the back end.
Yeah, I understand that part. because that's the way we do all of our audits. So if I have a blue bin that we find organics in it, I'm doing a 200-pound sample of the blue bin, I'm doing a 200-pound sample of the gray bin, and I'm doing a 200-pound sample of the organics bin. Is that correct?
It would be 200-pound sample of each organic waste type. So for example, if you process and you pulled out green material, cardboard, food waste, each of those would be sampled as a 200-pound sample. Does that answer the question?
Janet, this is Ashley, and I see Kara popped on. Are you talking about the waste evaluations versus facility sampling? So
I'm trying to get a clear picture of what's being expected of us. So is this just looking at organics? So I'm only looking at the organics bin, even though I know our blue bin because it has more room. I'm going to put stuff over there from our curbside customers.
Sure. I think, Jen, I think what we're trying to get clarity on is in section 18984.5, B and C, for contamination monitoring for the curbside collection containers, a jurisdiction can choose to either do route reviews, look in blue, gray, green carts, tag those carts, provide education, or C, the jurisdiction can choose to do a waste evaluation to evaluate the contamination or prohibited container contaminants through a waste evaluation. And that all of that is laid out in section C, subsection C of that article. So I'm thinking that's what you're asking about versus what B presented as far as the facility measurement requirements in general. Is that what you're asking? And if so, yes, the regulations do specify that it's each of the container types, so green, blue, gray, must be evaluated. And then in that section of the regulations, it lays out the frequency of those waste evaluations, if that's the direction a jurisdiction chooses. But again, a jurisdiction does not have to select waste evaluations for its container contamination monitoring program.
So it was actually a two-part question. It was, yes, you answered that one. So now at the facility, because they're bringing we have a couple that actually the city hauls its own stuff to us, and they're asking us to do it here. So now here at the transfer station, and we have multiple ones coming in. I have the city, I have some privates, I have some others coming in. We're being asked to keep each, like I have the city, I have an unincorporated county area where it's hauled by a private. We have to keep all those wastes separate, correct? And do a 200-pound sample of just what is considered the organics bin.
So I think we have two things going on. So
yes.
I think the latter part of your question is focused on the measurements that need to happen at your facility. Yes. Versus the waste evaluation. So B and Martin, I'm going to pass that back to you because now we're actually on what's required of them as a facility. But lastly, Janet, if any of those jurisdictions are choosing to do the waste evaluation approach for container contamination monitoring, that is an optional approach. And if they are choosing that, then they certainly will need to coordinate, with your facility when they're doing those waste evaluations, et cetera. So that I think answers the first part of your question. And certainly you're not required to do that for them, but it's something that definitely needs to be collaborated. So I'll turn it back to B and Martin to talk about
one comment.
Oh, sure.
One comment as you go through this, because they do RFPs and they can put it in the RFP and then have it a requirement in order to get the RFP. So it does get pushed down from up above down because now it's pushed to someone else to do.
Yeah.
FYI.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that's a really important piece to be informing the jurisdictions, because still they're utilizing your facility, right, for that waste evaluation that they're choosing to do. So if there's any conversations that you need the local assistance staff to be a part of to communicate to those jurisdictions, we can certainly do that. But I'll turn it back to you.
We welcome it. We just want to understand it so that we can do it to meet the standard.
You bet. B, Martin.
Okay, so if the transfer and processing facility is receiving the material and the sampling they're doing is to comply with the solid waste facility regulations, then it would still happen at the back end after it's been processed, regardless of what or how it comes in through the front end. Does that answer the question?
No.
Okay, maybe
So I can mix, I have 5 different entities bringing us stuff. I can mix it, put it across my sort line, and just measure the outcome and say, this is what all your numbers are, and it happens to be the same number?
No, so the MO and SSO, the mixed organic waste and the source separated cannot be separated. I mean, sorry, cannot be combined. They have to be kept separate. So when you process it through the facility, you have to process them different. And so for each organic waste type that you pull out during the processing, each of those waste types has to be measured. So you're going to sample each waste type you actually separated at that facility. And you're going to do it for the SSO only, and then what you pulled out for the MO. And that's where you're going to be taking a sample. So you may have to take several samples. It'll be for each organic waste type from those 2 main waste streams.
So in a 3-bin system, I have an organics bin and I have a...
Well, when we talk about MO, it's going to be there's the MO and the SSO. So if that container under Article 3 is required to go to a high diversion facility, then that's how you're going to differentiate between the SSO and the MO. So you probably will have you will have MO, I mean organics in the MO. So whatever you pull out of there, that's what you're going to sample. And you're only sampling and you're only interested in the organic fraction. So if for some reason you have a container that has plastics and metals and then there's some organic in there, then you're only going to be really interested in measuring the organics because that's what we want to know. Does that help? Does that explain it? Or?
I need to go to training. Thank you.
Hi, all. So we have about 2 minutes left. So let's just do Christine Wolf and Alex Oseguera's question. And then for anything we don't answer, we will be able to answer it later because we can pull a log of it. So if someone could unmute Christine and let her know when she could speak, and then we'll do Alex's. And for anything else, we will get back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. So Christine, I've unmuted you. And also just want to acknowledge that folks have also submitted questions to the SLCP inbox. So we will get to those later after the webinar as well. Christine, go for it.
Thanks. This is Christine from Ecology. I think I saw a couple questions on this. I think there are some of us who either operate large volume transfer processors and we move SSO through those facilities, but we're not actually doing any processing. We're just transferring that. So my understanding is that would be considered a consolidation site. Are we restricted from moving material from, if we were going to consider that as a consolidation site, from the consolidation site directly to the compost facility?
Yes, so consolidation sites are required to send their material directly to a transfer processing facility or operation that conducts organics processing.
And would that include a compost facility?
No.
Okay, so we would have to sample at the transfer processing facility even if we're not processing before we send it to the compost facility.
Yeah, that's correct. In order for it to go to composting, they need to conduct measurements and comply with the organic waste recovery efficiency so that it can go to composting. or other organic waste recovery activity.
Thank you.
And the last question will be by Alex Osegra. If you can please unmute yourself, state your affiliation, and ask your question.
All right, this is Alex Oseguera from Waste Management. I guess I have one comment and then I'll try to clarify my question again. So first, just a suggestion or comment. It'd be, I think, useful to have a slide. I like the slide that shows the vehicles arriving and where they need to go. It would be, I think, a good idea to have slides that show those same vehicles that are under the collection services model, and then those same vehicles under the performance-based model. So that was just a suggestion and a recommendation. Let me try to clarify my question. So if I have an existing 3-cart system, and I'm going to say that this, facility then has implemented everything under SB 1383, but under the current 3-cart system, the organic material or the green waste / organics container goes to an organics facility, a compost facility, and the blue container currently goes to a Murph facility. My question is, under SB 1383, starting January 1st, 2022, what has changed for the Murph performance and what has changed for the organic facility performance? Once again, there's a 3-cart system. Those materials have been flowing to these facilities, and it's under the collection services model. What changes for those 2 facilities?
Okay, Alex, I can try to answer that question. So what SB 1383 has done for the solid waste facility regulations, it's now added a requirement or a state minimum standard that facilities now have to determine how much organic waste for transfer processing would be, how much organic waste is being recovered at the back end and how much is being sent for disposal. And for composting facilities, they're required to now sample and determine how much organic material is being sent for disposal. So that's the part that 1383 is adding to the regulations for the solid waste facilities. Does that answer the question?
It does. I understand it better. Okay, so a Murph that has been meeting its permits currently, and you're sending materials from the blue bin to that facility, and that facility has to determine additional, analysis and auditing of the material once it leaves its facility. The same goes for materials from a green container or an organics container that flows to a facility that's processing and converting that. I'm just going to give an example to compost. Any material, then what needs to be measured is what material then is also being sent that is incompatible materials. And that's at the point of measurement. So those facilities are still compliant and they're meeting their permits.
Right. So that the measurements won't change, performing the measurements won't change the actual permit requirements as it pertains to what they can and cannot do or what they can and cannot receive. That stays as is. That part of the regulations didn't change. All that changes now that they have to do is actually measure their output for the organic content.
Thank you. Truly appreciate the explanation.
Well, perfect. Thank you guys so much. So we are over our 10 o'clock time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's schedule. Again, we do have your questions documented. We will pull them. We'll look at the SLCP inbox, and we will have responses to you guys probably within a couple of weeks. And if you do have any other questions, please feel free to email the SLCP inbox or mailbox. And again, I would just like to thank our solid waste facilities team for putting all of this together. Like B had mentioned earlier, we are working on more tools and guidance, and that will be released as soon as possible. We will get out a listserv message. So again, sign up for the SLCP listserv. And then for those of you who attend the technical training series, again, that will be in April. So have a great day, everybody, and thank you for all of your questions. They were great. So have a good one, everyone.